Hi guys, in case you are in the process of applying for your Canadian PR or you're just in the phase of doing a lot of research for it, you might be asking yourself the question, can I actually apply for my Canadian PR by myself? Can I submit the application or should I enlist the help of a third party, for example, an immigration consultant or immigration lawyer? So today in this video, I will talk exactly about that and also talk about the mistake that you need to avoid if you want to get your PR. But before we start, welcome to my channel Living in Canada. On this channel here, I make videos about daily life in Canada, immigrating, moving to Canada. So if these are topics that interest you, then consider hitting the subscribe button. And in that case, also don't forget to set the notification bell to all notifications so you'll not miss the next video from me. A bit about my own PR journey. Both I and my husband got our PR approved this year and we already got our PR cards. And we got our PR after living in Canada for about 4 years. And we applied for the PR by ourselves and we did not have a third party who did that for us. So today in this video, I want to give you my personal opinion of whether or not you should, or let me rephrase that, whether or not it's a good idea to prepare your application package by yourself, to apply by yourself, or whether it's a better idea to get the help of a third party like an immigration consultant who does the work for you and to whom you pay a fee to get it done. But before I continue, very important disclaimer here, I am not an immigration consultant, immigration advisor, immigration lawyer. Everything that I'm going to tell you in this video is based purely on my own experience, my own knowledge, and these are all opinions. So always make sure that you do your own research because getting your Canadian PR, I guess, might be one of the most important things for you in your life, and you don't want to mess it up. That being said, a lot of people are inclined to just going with an immigration consultant because they think that that's the easier way. And you might have heard of the services that these immigration consultants or immigration lawyers offer. Some of them offer a complete package where they take care of your PR application, they collect and gather the documents from you one by one, they go through all the requirements, they fill out the application form for you, and in the end, they submit your application on your behalf. So in the PR application in the system, they are actually listed as your representative. And usually you would sign an agreement with them that states that they are the ones submitting your PR application, and for that service you pay them this and this fee. And that fee for that complete package can range anywhere from $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 perhaps. I personally don't know the exact number because I haven't used that service. So it's a lot of money, right? But if you can get your PR and if you can increase your chances to get your Canadian PR, then it might still be worth it, right? That's what you might be thinking. And back then, before I started this whole PR process, that's also what I thought. I was considering whether or not to just get the service of an immigration consultant to help me with everything, because that way it would be less work for me and I would be less anxious about the whole process because there would be someone who would guide me step by step and the possibility of me making any mistakes would likely be smaller. But in the end, I'm not sure if this is a blessing in disguise. Perhaps we decided not to go with an immigration consultant who did the whole thing for us, but instead we went through the process ourselves. But later in the end, I will actually talk about a third option. Here we're just talking about two options, one submitting by yourself and the second one using an immigration consultant. So later on in this video, I'll tell you about the third option, which we went, which I think was the most ideal solution. So anyway, when we were about to apply for our PR, we were in the very early stages of our life here in Canada and we were trying to save up a lot of money. We really didn't want to spend a lot. So $5,000 or even $3,000 or whatever was a lot of money for us and we really didn't want to spend that money. So in the end, we just did some research about the process of PR application. We read some forums, blogs, etc. And we figured that actually the process was very straightforward and it turned out to be straightforward. So there was nothing super complicated about it or anything that we couldn't understand or do by ourselves. And that is why we decided to just do it by ourselves. That being said, there are of course a lot of people who have been successful going with immigration consultants and they had a very good experience because in the end, whether or not your experience is good or bad will highly depend depend on the specific consultant, right? So who you choose to work with you will really impact the whole process. By the way, my hair is flying around in this video, and no, this is not an extra special effect. It's just so super hot and humid in Toronto in the month of August that I had to turn the fan on even while I'm recording. So just in case it impacts the sound, sorry about that. And I just want to really emphasize here that I'm not saying that going with an immigration consultant, advisor, or lawyer is a good thing or a bad thing. But again, it really depends on who you're working with. But in this video here, I want to address one possible pitfall that you can encounter when you decide to enlist the service of one of these immigration consultants. So this is something that can happen, but will not necessarily happen. By the way, guys, if you're enjoying this video so far, if you found it useful, then it would help me a lot if you would click the like button so that this video could get out to more people. Thank you. But I just want you to really pay attention to this because I really want you to get your PR as well and not make this potential mistake I'm going to talk about. So one mistake that people tend to make when they get the help of a third party is that they begin to rely 100% on them. They become fully dependent on them. So before that, when you were still researching on your own, you would really pay attention to all the requirements, the process, the steps, and everything because you want to make sure you don't make a mistake. But once you hand over everything to that immigration consultant, you kind of start to relax, you kind of start to sit back and trust that they will take care of everything, that they will take the lead and that they will process your PR and ensure that you get a positive result. And sure, in many cases that does happen. In many cases, working with an immigration consultant does lead to a better outcome because they are simply much more knowledgeable and experienced in the whole process, so it makes sense. But the important thing is that you just need to keep in mind that they too are human and they too are prone to human error. So if your immigration consultant just had you, one person, as a client, then perhaps they would be able to pay full attention to your application, really be dedicated and focused about it. But just imagine if this immigration consultant, even though they have a team, are currently taking care of 100 applications, 100 cases, and you are just one amongst them. You can surely imagine that there is always a possibility that something can slip through the cracks and a mistake gets made. That is why personally I am a big proponent of doing the PR application yourself, submitting it by yourself. Because the truth is that no one in the world cares more about your PR application than you yourself, because you are the one who are going to get the PR and use it to immigrate to Canada, not the immigration consultant. So the immigration consultant, of course, they will benefit from being successful because they get paid for it, and if they provide a high quality of service, then their service will spread by word of mouth and their business will grow, etc. But still, I would say that not all consultants would actually care about your application on a personal level, and it makes sense because it's just business, right? Guys, you really want to avoid this kind of situation. Do never fully entrust 100% of your application process into the hands of someone else, no matter who that is and no matter how experienced they are. Okay, now I want to tell you my personal story and why I feel so strongly about this, and that has to do with my work permit. So when we first arrived here in Canada, my husband was on a study permit because he was studying for a postgraduate certificate, while I got a work permit as a spouse, an open work permit. But at one point, that open work permit expired and we had not gotten our PR yet, so I needed to extend my work permit. And at that time, we were working with an immigration lawyer who was helping us through the PR process, but we didn't get to a very advanced stage yet. But just for reference here, at that time, we were not working with this immigration lawyer to do the end-to-end process for our PR, but just working with her on an hourly basis. So anyway, I thought, okay, why not just get her help to also apply the work permit for me, because that would perhaps increase my chances and prevent me from making any kinds of mistakes. But that was a big mistake. So I must say, this immigration lawyer, she's very knowledgeable, she's a very nice, kind, hardworking person. But it just happened so that at that time she was going through a very hard time personally. At that time, someone in her family was very ill and needed special medical attention and also her support. So because of that, she wasn't fully on the ball. She wasn't really focused on the application. At least that is what I think. Again, I got her help to process the work permit for me, and she helped me to go through my application, my documents, etc. And then she submitted the application package for the work permit. And working with someone who was so specialized and experienced, I thought, okay, this is a done deal. I just need to sit back and now wait for my work permit. So months after that, I was so surprised to find out that my application for my work permit, it was just an extension of a work permit, had been declined. And the reason was, there were two reasons. First, there was an incorrect box checked on the application. And second, there was a set of documents that I should have submitted for the application that I didn't, because I didn't know that I had to. And the immigration lawyer, she didn't tell me that I needed to submit it. So after this whole thing happened, she actually told me that she was sorry and that she actually made a mistake. And because she admitted that it was her mistake, she actually refunded me the fee that I paid her to take care of the work permit. But at that point, you can imagine my frustration. I didn't care at all about the fee. I mean, at that time, I was at a point where I was willing to pay twice the fee just to get my work permit. But instead, my work permit was declined, and then I had to go through the process all over again. And then fast forward, what I did was I applied by myself, went through all the steps by myself, and I actually got my work permit approved. And that made me really think. That made me think that, right, you should never leave important things in other people's hands. I mean, you can get their help, their advice, their support, their recommendations, but in the end, you really need to take ownership of your own application. The thing that happened in my case was a typical case of human error, and things like this happen because we are all humans and we make mistakes, right? But if you want to make sure that you have the highest chances with your PR application and that you don't mess it up, then whether you do it by yourself or you get the help of someone else, you yourself really need to know the ins and outs of the application itself and what is going on with the whole application. Don't just sit back and leave it to someone else. Because otherwise, like in my case, it cost me my work permit. It could cost you your Canadian PR. From that, I will now continue to the good news, or let's rather say my opinion on this and what I think which route you can actually take. So far we talked about two possibilities, right? The first one is submitting the application by yourself completely. The second one is enlisting the help of an immigration consultant to get the whole thing done for you end to end. But there is also a third option. So now let's go through all of these options and talk about the plus and minuses very briefly. So the first option is applying for PR by yourself. And of course, the downsides there is that you might not really know what to fill out in this part of the application, or you're not really sure about these documents and you don't really have anyone to ask. But on the other hand, the upside is that because you're doing it yourself, you're taking on the whole risk by yourself, you will actually really pay attention to every little detail on your application. And because you know that everything depends on you and your efforts, you will put as much effort as possible, do as much research as possible to make your application as strong as possible. So the next one we talked about is getting the help of an immigration consultant to do the whole thing end to end for you. And the upside is, of course, if you happen to work with someone who's very knowledgeable, experienced, and reliable and has a high success rate in some sense, then your chances of getting PR will also increase. But the downside is, one, of course, you need to pay that very, very high fee in most cases. $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 or whatever, depending on how complicated your case is, right? And also number two, like I said, that you will tend to sit back and leave it to them. And in that case, you might risk human error happening without you being aware of it. But now let's get to the third solution, which in my opinion is the very best solution, which is do the application by yourself and submit it by yourself, but get the help of an immigration consultant, lawyer, or advisor, but consult with them only on an hourly basis, meaning that you only hire them for, let's say, an hour or 2 hours to ask them your questions and get their guidance. And that is exactly what we did with our PR application as well, and it was successful and it was a really good experience. So what we did was we went ahead and did all the research, went through all the steps in detail, starting from what kind of documents we needed, what translation. We also took a look at the application form and went line through line in detail and scrutinized what we needed to fill out here. We also researched blogs and forums and looked at what other people thought about it. And honestly, it was a lot of work. In the end, it took us maybe 20-30 hours or more. I lost track of it to really understand all of the details. But in the end, our application package was almost complete, but we were left with some questions that were unanswered and we couldn't find the answer anywhere. So what we did was that we went to an immigration consultant and asked her our questions. So we had this list of maybe 10 questions or so that we asked her, and these were very detailed and case-specific questions. And before we met the immigration consultant, we already listed down all of the facts and questions we had in much detail. We prepared all the documents so that we could make the most of that 1 hour, because 1 hour with an immigration consultant can cost anywhere between $100, $150 to $100 depending on who you're working with. And that too might sound like a lot of money to you, but in my personal opinion, it is money very well spent, because after that 1 hour plus session with that immigration consultant, all our questions were answered to our satisfaction, and we knew exactly what we needed to put on our application and complete the details. So we were confident to submit our application, and voila, the result was positive. We got our PR application approved. So guys, this is just my personal opinion, but this is the route that I would take for Canadian PR. And one of the reasons also why I think this is because the Canadian PR process, I must say to their credit, is very easy to understand and very straightforward, and there are tons of resources that you can actually find on the official website. So there are explanations to anything. When they ask about language requirements or about your education requirements, certifications, etc., they give you the information in much detail so you can study everything for yourself there. So you don't actually need to work with an immigration consultant unless you have a very special case, let's say a complicated case, or there are just too many questions that you are unsure about and that you need help with. I would also say that you should treat working with an immigration consultant as sort of an insurance for your PR application. It means that you take ownership of your own PR application, but you work with a third party just to have them have a second look at your application to make sure that you didn't miss anything. So guys, if you're in the process of planning to immigrate to Canada and you're not really sure where to start, then you can go ahead and check out this playlist over here where I talk about some of the things related to the PR process, including express entry, the CEC or the Canadian Experience Class program, and also the Federal Skilled Workers program. So that might help you. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you again next time.